Hello and welcome back to Speed Demon Painting. Today we're taking a look at the Laoshan battlegroup set, which was kindly sent to me by Warcradle Studios for review. This is a medium-sized box for the Empire for Armoured Clash. These boxes of course come shrink wrapped, but I always take that one off ahead of the review to avoid any obvious glares. So let's take the sleeve off of this box and see what is inside. And the first thing you're greeted with is this little pamphlet which has some extra info on it and a QR code which will lead you to the build instructions for this set, and it also has some extra info in there about Dystopian Wars, the sister game of Armoured Clash. We also have two sprues of bases, because this box also comes with some plastic miniatures which will need to be put on there, such as the steam bikes for instance, and some of the mechanized dog automata as well. It also comes with a massive bag of resin parts to make the big Landship, the Laoshan or the Wutai, and of course it comes with two plastic sprues which are the Armoured Regiment sprues for the Empire. As you can see, some of these miniatures, such as the jet bikes, will need to be put into those bases that I mentioned earlier. I have already made a review about these plastics. They're in the two-player starter box Battle for Singapore review, so if you want to check that one out in more detail, I advise you to look at that video. And if you're interested in more things Dystopian Age, be it Armoured Clash or Dystopian Wars, make sure that you subscribe to the channel for any future videos. The main reason why Warcradle Studios includes these plastic sprues is because some parts, mostly turrets, are going to have to be used on the different landships, and if you want to magnetize them, you absolutely can. I would like to refer to my colleagues over at the Markov dossier if you want to check out how you can do that best. I already have painted up some of these models, the battle tanks. This is the Fangun medium tank, and this one uses one of the turrets I just mentioned. The other variant of the turret is a sort of flamer, and this is the one that the Wutai uses, while the cannon part is being used by the Fangun. And that does mean that if you build one of the two Landship variants, you're very likely not to have enough turrets to be able to use for your medium battle tanks. For instance, the Laoshan, seen here, uses these gun turrets, so if you decide to go for that option, you will not be able to make the Fangun, seen here. However, if you go for the alternate build, the Wutai Landship, you will not be able to make the flame version of this particular tank, which is depicted elsewhere on the box. Similarly, if you're building the Wutai, you're going to have to use some of these barrels found on this artillery piece, and you will not be able to make a unit of two of these artillery pieces, so you're going to have to sort of pick and choose which one you want to build, because the Wutai uses 2 out of 3 of them, and well, this game uses multiples of the minimum sized squadrons that you can find on these sprues, so you're going to have to build the launchers instead, the anti-infantry launchers I should say, if you want to build the Wutai variant. Those are the only 2 units, however, that will be limited by what you build with your flagship. These ones, the jet bikes, are absolutely not limited, so you can just reinforce any units you have or start a fresh unit. Same thing for the Lion Automata. You do not have to use any parts on the Landship, so you can just make whichever variant you want. And similarly, if you want to reinforce your Jezzails or start a second unit, you absolutely can. These are some of the best anti-tank units available in the game right now, so definitely worth getting some extra if you're picking up this box as well. Right, and onto the main part of the show, the big Landship. Now the main part of it is this massive hull in the center. It does come with some pretty beefy sprue gates on there that you will have to clip off, and apart from this one mold line in the back, I can't really make out any other mold lines across the hull, so you're gonna have to glue a piece of resin at the back there anyway, so the a bit more unsightly mold line in the back is going to be removed, so that shouldn't pose any issues. However, if you want to clip off these big sprue gates, I do advise you get a hairdryer, heat up the resin a bit before you engage it with your clippers, because otherwise you might end up damaging, because well, that is a pretty solid piece of resin right there. There's quite a few other sprues found in this back. I'm just pulling them out in a random order, and this one is the Death Roller, which can be found on the Laoshan. It has a fairly narrow contact point, which makes it tricky to magnetize, but again, Sam from the Markov dossier has already done this, and I believe he used 3x2 magnets in there to be able to do so. I'm just gluing mine down, however, because I'm mostly using this one as a demo force. Apart from the Death Roller, you also get 2 sprues of these wheels. You're going to have to clip those off, and I actually managed to magnetize them in the end. They basically are glued down in between these A1 and A2 parts. As you can see, there was a bit of cleanup required on them to remove all of the flash, but that was fairly straightforward. And the reason why you can find letters A1 and B2 and A2 and B2 on the other side is because there are also some other bits that slot in there. Now this big piece is the bit that you have to glue onto the back of it, which is why I said that that big mold line in the back doesn't really bother me. That one is going to be covered up. Now those letters, like I said, correspond with these parts found on a separate sprue, which is very handy because you don't really need your build instructions to be able to make this model. All you have to do is clip them up clean up some of the flash if need be, and then after that you can glue in the wheels. They have these little pegs and holes as well. There are some, again, some flashing that will need to be removed and some mold lines, nothing too excessive, and a small bit of sprue gate in between the wheels, but all of that is fairly straightforward. Now I went ahead and clipped these off and then installed some 4x2 magnets at the sprue gates of these wheels, and that left me with some pretty good contact points when I put it on a steel plate. The last bit that needs to be assembled is basically the front end, and well, you either have to pick the part from the Laoshan that I just showed, or you can use this one, which is used for the Wutai, which will take the 2 plastic gun barrels like I mentioned earlier. There's also a small sort of section that can be glued onto the bottom where you have the contact point for the Death Roller I mentioned earlier, and you'll be using that one if you build the Wutai. The next bit are 2 smokestacks that are fairly easy to install, and then you've got 2 weapons that need to be fitted in the front. The first one being this massive flamethrower, which basically goes into the bottom. You do have to clean off some flashing in between there, as you can see, but that is nothing too egregious. The only part that did require a lot of work was this barrel of cannons in the front. There was a bit of a misalignment on the sprue, as you can see here, which means that I had to clean up a bit of it. Now, it's fairly easy to do because it's resin, and luckily it's not very visible because it's at the back end of that cannon, and that is neatly tucked away at the bottom there, but still, it's something that is not very common for War Cradle Studio resins to have a misalignment to such an extent. And then finally you also get a sprue with some extra turrets, resin ones, because you have to use 2 of those turrets depending on the type of landship that you're building in the back piece there, and then the other 4 that can be found in the main hull are going to have to be the plastic sprues that I mentioned earlier, and that will determine which variant of tank that you can build, as I explained earlier in the video. And like I said, I will be going for the Laoshan build and gluing most of the things down, not using any magnets, but if you want to use a magnet guide, I will link you in the description below where you can find one. This is the first sub-assembly that I did. Those are the main parts of it, and like I said, I installed some 4x2 magnets, and that is an incredibly good hold on this metal surface, so that's going to work out just fine. Like I said, I've been able to clean up that part for the most, but I had to chafe off quite a bit of resin, but that one is installed at the top here, and if that big piece slides over the top, you will not be able to see most of the blemishes on that barrel, so I'm just going to leave it as it is. The smaller one is installed at the bottom, and again that one is going to not be very visible if you had some misalignment either. I also found one small issue with the smokestacks. They have a very big area for the peg to go into, way bigger than the actual peg is. It didn't cause any issues when I glued it down, but it did seem a bit weird that there was a bit of a mismatch in the size of these 2 parts. Another small tip I can give you is to glue the weapons down, sure, but then do not glue the top part on there just yet, simply so that you can actually reach those parts when the time comes to actually prime the model as well. And as you can see here, it accidentally fell off. I did glue those two down, but I did not glue it into place just yet, simply because I airbrush primer my my models, and that basically allows me to still reach those parts. And a small note, the back end of this tray for the Laoshan has some parts that are visible on the left and right hand side of those sprue gates, so you definitely want to clean those up well. There are some sprue gates there, but make sure you clean those off, because that's an actual visible part of the model. And there we have it, that is the model all assembled. And if you want to see a comparison by the monarch, or with the monarch or sovereign that I painted up earlier, that's it. This one is quite a bit taller, but a lot more slender as well, and a bit longer too. So it's nice to see that they do not all share the exact same footprint, and there is some variance between the different landships across the different factions. And for those of you who play with the Empire in Dystopian Wars, if you want to see them compared to this Yangtze battleship for the Chinese, this is the comparison. It's quite a lot more model on these new resin landships from Armoured Clash compared to the even impressive big flagships from Dystopian Wars. So that's always nice to see that the models just keep getting bigger and more impressive as well. That is it for me for today, though. I do hope you liked this video, and if you did, remember to give it a thumbs up. That always helps with the YouTube algorithm. Next up, I'll be showing you how I go about painting these big landships, so I hope to see you in the next video. Until then, bye!